The following program is a Town of Colonie television production of the William K. Sanford Town Library.
It goes all my life's a circle, sunrise and sundown. The moon rolls through the nighttime till the daybreak comes around. And all my life's a circle, but I can't tell you why. Seasons spinning round again, the years keep rolling by.
So, once there was a couple, a wife and a husband, Esme and Jorge. And they were very poor. So poor, in fact, that they often did not have enough to eat. One morning they got up, and for breakfast they ate the last little bit of rice they had left over from the night before. And they were still hungry. So Esme went to the pouch where they kept their money, and she knew how much was in there, 2 pennies, but she dumped it out, hoping there'd be more. 2 pennies. She picked them up. Jorge, she said, why don't you take these 2 pennies to the market and buy us an egg? It'd be something healthy and different and would maybe sustain us until tomorrow. What do you think? Jorge said, I think it's a great idea. He took the 2 pennies, he put them in the pocket of his raggedy old coat, and he set out for the market. When he got there, he was almost sorry he had come, because there were peppers and papayas and melons and pineapples, so beautiful and colorful, and somebody was selling somewhere a soup or a stew that just smelled delicious, and he couldn't afford any of it. So he made his way to where he knew the egg seller was. The egg seller was a man that he knew named Juan. And there was Juan just about to fall asleep behind the crate where he had set up his eggs. That gave Jorge an idea. He said, Juan, why don't you go home and take a nap, and I'll stay here and sell your eggs for you, and you could pay me by giving me 2 eggs. Oh, that's a good idea, said Juan, and he went home to take a nap. Well, Jorge took the 2 eggs he'd been promised, very carefully put them in his pockets, and then began enthusiastically to sell eggs. Eggs! Come buy your eggs! Fresh, delicious eggs! Well, before you know it, he had sold all the eggs. And when Juan came back, he said, Jorge, you did such a good job. I brought these 3 additional eggs planning to sell them, but here, you take them. You certainly deserve them. So now how many eggs does Jorge have?
5.
5 eggs. So very carefully holding these 3 with the 2 in his pocket, he walked home as fast as he could to Esme, got in the door. Esme, I have 5 eggs. Jorge, 5 eggs! She took them and put them in a pot of water, put the pot on to boil. She watched them carefully. When they were done, she peeled them. She put them on the plate in the middle of the table. Jorge, they're ready! And he came and sat down. Now, she said, 2 for you and 3 for me. Esme, said Jorge, I'm the one who went to the market and did all the work to get these eggs. I should have 3 for me and 2 for you. Esme said, it was my idea, and you got the interesting job of going to the market while I had to sit home bored and wait for you, and besides, I cooked them. 3 for me and 2 for you. Esme, if I don't get 3 eggs, I'm going to walk out that door and I'm never coming back. Jorge, if I don't get 3 eggs, I'll die. 3 for me, he said. To his great surprise, Esme stood up and she died. Oh, said Jorge, Esme's dead. Guess I'll have to go scrounge up some wood and make her a coffin. So he went out and found some scrap wood and brought it home and began to hammer together a coffin. As he did, he said, too bad Esme's dead. Poor Esme. She should have been happy with 2 eggs. And from right there beside him on the floor, he heard, I want 3. So he finished the coffin, and he went and he got the neighbors, and they helped him put Esme in the coffin, and as he hoisted it up to his shoulder, he said, "Too bad Esme wasn't happy with 2 eggs." From inside the coffin, he heard, "I want 3. They carried the coffin to the graveyard, set it down. The neighbors began to dig, and Jorge got out his hammer and the nails. He said, time to hammer on the top." At the first blow of the hammer, the top sprang off and Esme sat up. "All right," she said, "you can have 3 eggs." "That's better," said Jorge. And they went home and they sat down at the table. The eggs, of course, were still on the table. Jorge took an egg. "Esme, you're a good cook." Esme took an egg. "Jorge, you did a good job getting us these eggs." Jorge took another egg. "Esme, you're a good sport." Esme took another egg. "Jorge, you made me a nice coffin." "Oh, look, a spider!" As Jorge turned around to look, Esme grabbed the last egg and stuffed it in her mouth. "3 for me is all," she said.
We'll take Gallimanders. Gallimanders is from Richard Chase's collection, Grandfather Tales.
Okay.
There was an old lady. She was right mean. But she owned enough property and had a big enough house that she needed help. Now, none of the local people would work with her because she was right mean. So she sent across the sea, and she got herself a girl from England. Now, she said, room and board and payment at the end of the year. And the girl was so poor, and her ma and the little ones are so poor, she said, "Ma, I'll go all the way across the big waters, and I'll help us. And at the end of the year, I'll send you money." "All right, darling." And so across the water she went. And didn't that old lady just meet her at the dock? And she got a ride on a wagon from a neighbor because she was too cheap to own her own wagon, too cheap to have her own mule to pull that wagon. And everything she did, she borrowed from someone, but she never did give back. And everywhere someone went, she'd say, "Can you give me a lift? Can you give me a ride? Can you give me? Can you give me? Can you give me?" But she never did give of anything herself. Well, the girl, she knew nothing of that. She brought her little old trunk. There wasn't much in it, just a few changes of clothes and her favorite Bible and some paper to write her ma. Not a lot. So she went home with that woman. And by golly, that was a big old house to take care of. It was stone with a big old long wide porch and a big old fireplace. And she had chickens, and she had hogs, she had a milk cow, and all of this needed taken care of. She had a big wood pile. There was plenty of wood to have to chop. And she told that girl, she said, "This here's your little room." And it wasn't no more than a little old closet kind of space, kind of crunched in a corner of the house. Hardly room for a girl to put a dress on and take a dress off. But she said, "Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am." And she was looking forward to the first meal she'd get, but that woman let her know there wasn't going to be no meal until she cleaned. And so she cleaned that whole big old stone house, and she lit the fire, and she said, "Time for you to make us some dinner." Well, it wasn't a bad dinner. They had themselves some eggs, and she made some corn pone, and she got to eat with the lady, and she thought, well, now this will be all right. She's kind of grumpy, but that's okay, as long as she's fair. Well, she got up, and the next morning she was put to chopping wood, she was put to hauling water, she was put to taking care of the hog, taking care of the chicken, taking care of the cow, and then she had to dust everything, and then she had to wash all the floors, and then she had to get ready to make all the meals. Well, come to be, there was only one good meal a day. That woman was so cheap that they just have plain old flatbread, fried in lard for 2 of the meals a day. And tea and coffee, they was only once a week. The rest of it was just water straight from the well. And the only vegetables they had, well, the ones the girl grew in the garden. But you know what? She was a good gardener. So that old lady ate better than she had in years. She's looking at her going, well, that girl might be worth keeping. And a month went by, and another month went by, and another month went by, and there was no mention of any money. And the girl kind of said, well, ma'am, yes, what is it? Well, ma'am, you said you pay at the end of the year, but is there a possibility that you could pay like once every 3 months so I could send my ma some money? She's pretty poor and there's little ones to take care of. Well, no, I don't do it that way. You're going to have to wait till the end of the year. But my ma has some real needs. And you know what? She spoke up the next week and the next week. And the third time she spoke up, the old lady said, get to your room now, and I'll get you a coin or two out. And so she went to her room and she stayed in there. Then the old lady, come on out now. And then she gave her a couple of coins. Well, now that girl, right quick, wrote a letter off to her ma, had them coins all wrapped up so nobody knew what they were. And then the old lady said, I'll get a ride into town and I'll mail it for you. Well, she actually did. But before she left, she said, I got to get me supplies. And I want to tell you this. Don't you ever look up my chimney. You can do anything else you want in this house. When you're done with all your chores, you can sit and rock in that rocker you like so much. She said, you can wander in them woods, but you keep away from my chimney. Yes, ma'am. She thought that was the oddest thing she'd ever heard. And so the old lady went into town, got some supplies. You know, she'd asked a neighbor for a ride as he went by. She certainly didn't have any conveyance of her own. And all was well. Little girl, she didn't think nothing of it. She had plenty of her own to do chimneys. It was summer. What she carrying them out? So it went. In 3 months hence, another packet of coins, and then 3 months later, another packet of coins. But they were just little tiny bits. It wasn't the big payment that was due at the end of the year. And here comes the end of the year, and the girl's so excited she just can't wait. And she says, ma'am, it's been a full year. It's time for the payment. She said, girl, you ain't getting no more than you've been getting every 3 months. But ma'am, that's not what you agreed to. My mom needs that money. I've been waiting a whole year to help my family. More than this, they just barely making it. Well, you ain't stayed long enough. You ain't proved good enough. You ain't proved well that I can trust you, so you ain't getting the rest of it till I decide. Well, she had to do what she had to do. She got no place else to go. She didn't know anybody else, and it was the only money she could send her ma. So she sent the coins in, sadder and sadder. The next 3 months, same number of coins. The next 3 months, same number of coins. It's a year and a half now. The next 3 months, same number of coins. This is getting to be really hard. And to tell the truth, if that girl didn't grow good vegetables and know how to put things by, they wouldn't have ate much of anything good. Because only eggs once a day. And the milk, well, they got to drink a little bit, but most of it, the old lady'd take and sell off. Neighbors was mad, so she'd have to give him or sell him milk. Came to be about 2 years. And that girl, she was not only hungry, she was really upset about her ma and her little ones, her sisters and brothers. So, it was a nice warm day. And the old lady said, I got to go into town now. As I tell you every time, don't you be looking up my chimney. Keep yourself busy otherwise. Yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am. And so she did every chore there was and then some. And she sat down. She was so tired. She was a-rocking and a-rocking in the chair. And she was a-knitting as she sat there, trying to make another blanket for one of her siblings when she thought, chimney. Why is she always so crazy about her chimney? Well, it ain't my business. It ain't my business. It ain't my business. Chimney. She went over and she peeked up. Well, there's nothing up that chimney. What the heck? And then she'd cleaned all the ash out. Everything was pretty and nice. And she looked up, and then way up there was a little shelf sticking out. And there was a little string piece of leather hanging down. And she said, she's got something up there. Something she don't want me to see. Well, that's not my business. She tried to knit, but then she went outside and got herself a stick. And she reached up, and she got that little string of leather, and she pulled, and clunk! Right down on the floor of the fireplace, there fell a long leather bag, and it was heavy. And she opened that up, and it was full of gold and silver. And you know what? It was full of coins that she was owed. She had not been paid proper. And that girl thought, she's a mean old thing, and she's not getting any better. I'm getting the same coins. This is not working for me. And she pulled that tight, and she went in and gathered herself a bag, tied everything up in a knot, and she headed out crossing the pasture. And there, out in the pasture, was a neighbor's cow. Mom, girl, I need milking. Oh, please milk me. Well, alrighty. And she milked that cow. The cow said, oh, thank you. She said, I'm trying to get away from that old lady. Can you tell me where to go? Head over by that horse. He'll know. He can help you get where you can get away. And so she ran over across the pasture, and there was a horse, and he was just full of burrs. He said, oh, girl, please help me. Can you get rid of these burrs for me? Nobody been caring for me. And so she took time to take the burrs out of his mane and out of his tail. And he was so happy. He said, how can I help you? Well, I'm pretty hungry. I had to run off real quick. And so so she ran over to the apple tree. He said, get over there. The apple tree will let you eat. And the apple tree said, can you pick some of these apples? They're just too many for me. Can you knock some of these branches off? And so she did. And she ate till she was plumb full. And then she went on, and she said, how can I get out of here? He said, go over by the grist mill. You can hide in there. And then the guy there has got a boat. He can take you over to the port, and you can catch a ride home to your ma. And so she ran and she hid in that grist mill. That grist mill said, girl, there's a rock stuck and I can't turn. Can you get me and help me? And she did, and the mill started turning. Thank you, girl. Can I hide in here for a little while and rest till the man comes with the boat? Oh, sure enough. Well, that woman came home, and she didn't see no girl. She always saw the girl. And then she looked up her chimney and said, ah! She's got it! And she ran out, and she ran, and she saw the prince in the dust, headed over to the pasture, jumped up and said to the cow, Gallimanders, have you seen a girl go by here with a zig and a zag and a long leather bag and all my gold and silver? No, ma'am. So she ran over to the horse. Gallimanders, have you seen a girl run by here with a long leather bag and a zig and a zag and all my gold and silver? No, ma'am, I don't know what she's meaning. And then she bumps into that apple tree, and one knocks on her head, and she says, apple tree, you seen a girl run by here with a zig and a zag and a long leather bag and all my gold and silver? No, ma'am, not me. And then she goes over to the mill. Mill, have you seen a girl with a zig and a zag and a long leather rag and all my gold and silver? No, ma'am, I have not. And by that time, the girl was off with the boatman. And that woman screamed and ran, Gallimanders, all the way back home. And never did find that long leather bag with all her gold and silver.
It's a sad story, and I haven't figured out where to fit it in, but it belongs in my lineup of the reasons people fight. All right, once there was a Raja, a ruler of a certain small kingdom, and he had a son whom he was grooming to become Raja after him. Now, in the son's 10th year, the Raja engaged a new Diwan, or chief advisor. And when the Diwan's family moved into the royal compound, it was discovered that he had a 10-year-old son. And the boys became fast friends. The Raja's son was so happy to have someone sit with him and whisper during those tedious royal ceremonies, and to sit with him in front of those everlasting tutoring sessions on philosophy and history and government and literature and manners and music and swordsmanship and archery. Oh, now archery wasn't boring. The boys both loved archery. There was something about that combination of the physical strength and the precision. They just loved it, and they practiced every day, and they were soon quite skilled with the bow and arrows. Now, when the boys were 12 years old, they were allowed to accompany their parents on royal hunting expeditions. And when they were 14 years old, they were allowed to participate themselves and actually shoot their own bow and arrows. And when they were 15, they were allowed to go out hunting on their own. And so That is all they did. Every day, sun up to sundown, they were out hunting. Well, this disturbed their parents because they weren't home studying, and the parents scolded them. They said, in just a few years, you're going to have responsibility, positions of importance in this kingdom, and you're going to need to know everything you're being taught in government and philosophy and history. You need to know this. Stay home and study. But the boys didn't listen. Every day they were out hunting. So the parents made them stay home. And the boys sat there in front of the tutors, but really they were drawing maps about where they would go next and discussing various bow techniques. So the parents separated them, each one in his own house. And then they spent their time moping with the servants, carrying messages back and forth. So the parents gave up and they said, well, it's a phase, they'll get over it. But weeks went by and still they were out hunting. So with regret, the Raja sent his servant to the marketplace with a message, an announcement to the people that whoever could break up the boys' friendship would be given a large reward. Well, nobody came forward. I don't know if they felt sorry for the boys or what, but nobody came forward. But a few days later, the servant in the marketplace overheard an old woman, and she said, I could break up the boys' friendship. I wouldn't do it, though, unless the Raja gave me a lot of money. Well, the servant corralled the old woman, brought her before the Raja. She said she could break up the boys' friendship for 50 rupees. Oh, said the Raja, if you can do that, I'll give you 100 rupees. All right, said the old woman, I need 2 strong soldiers, a drummer, a length of brand new silk, and a palanquin. A palanquin is one of those litters with the long sticks where you carry someone on a journey, the canopy. So the Raja got her these things, 2 soldiers, a drummer, a length of silk, a palanquin. She took the soldiers to the hovel where she lived. She cut up the silk. She covered the palanquin, new curtains, covered the pillows so the boys would not recognize this palanquin before, from something they'd seen before. She took it off. They wouldn't recognize it again. And then she got a winnowing fan. She put that on the pillows and the palanquin, and then she got a sizable chunk of manure, and she put that on the winnowing fan. Then she had the drummer drum ta ta taki da taki da taki da ta ta taki da taki da taki da taki da, and she followed, and the soldiers picked up the palanquin and they marched up into the town through the market street, taki da taki da taki da, back the other way, back the other way. We're running out of time, and so finally the boys come and they see this palanquin, and the soldiers have been instructed not to tell who's in the palanquin, and so they put it down, and the Raja's son looks in and says, oh, what is that? And the Diwan's son says, well, we'll just have to take the story out. But the old woman, she says, I can tell one person why I am carrying manure around in this palanquin. And the Diwan's son said, all right, you can tell me. And then, said the old woman, that person may tell one person. All right, so she says to the Diwan's son, she pretended to whisper. She leaves. The Raja's son said, what did she say? Well, she didn't say anything. She just pretended to whisper. Oh, come on, you can tell me. She said you could tell one person. She just pretended to whisper. I am telling you. What? You're taking her side. She told you not to tell me. I'm your best friend. Look, let's go get her. She'll tell you what she told me. No, she's already told you, and you've agreed to keep me in the dark. I told you. I command you. I'm the Raja's son. Tell me what she said. If you pull rank on me like that, I don't even want to be your friend. Well, fine, I don't want to be your friend either.
One of the things that I do, besides origami in schools and everywhere, is to teach children and adults about Japan. About a year and a half ago, when my son and I went back to Japan to visit my family, we went to see real sumo wrestling event. Ooh. This was my first time. I have watched sumo wrestling on television, and nowadays you can watch a lot of it on YouTube. But it was quite something else to go and see see the real thing in the great big auditorium, if you would like to look at this catalog of gorgeous half-dressed, half-naked men. Someone can look at it.
I don't want to be mistaken. I just don't know.
But sumo wrestling is the Japan's national sport, and it has more than 1,000 years history. So a little over 1,000 years ago, it started as a part of a celebration for the rice harvest. Then there was a time in our history when Japan was ruled by samurai warriors. Sumo wrestling was part of every samurai warrior's basic training, along with sword fighting, archery, and study of classical literature. So this story comes from one such time, and it is called The Boundless Strength. Once upon a time, a long time ago in Japan, there was a young sumo wrestler and samurai warrior named Daikichi. Daikichi was known throughout his region for his skills and strength in sumo wrestling, and he loyally served his lord in a great big castle. But one year, his lord fell ill and passed away. And because his lord did not have male children, the family was abolished. The castle was taken over by another clan, and Daikichi suddenly found himself unemployed. He could not find another job, no matter how hard he tried. He felt disappointed, dejected, and bitter. So he started drinking, he gambled his money away, and started to pick fights out on the street. He felt as if all his strength was draining out of him. Well, one night, Daikichi was slumped over against a wall in a dark alley because he had no place to go. Suddenly, he heard some dogs barking and a woman scream. Some wild dogs had cornered a young woman into the alley. So Daikichi jumped up, grabbed a stick, and said, "Get! Get!" He chased the dogs away. "Are you all right?" "Yes, I am fine. Thank you so much." Now, the young woman was so grateful, and seeing that Daikichi had no place to stay, she invited him to come to her house to spend the night. Her name was Kayo. Kayo was a young widow who owned a little tea shop nearby. Daikichi was awed by Kayo's beauty and kindness. I mean, Kayo did not seem to care that Daikichi had neither money nor job. Pretty soon, they fell in love. Daikichi stopped drinking and gambling and started to help Kayo in the store and around the house. Then, one day, Kayo came home and said, "Guess what, Daikichi-san? I'm pregnant. We are going to have a baby." Daikichi was shocked. He did not know what to say. "Oh, baby? But you realize I don't have any money. I don't have a job. How am I supposed to take care of you and the baby? What do you want from me?" In panic, Daikichi spun around and rushed out of the house. But of course, he had no place to go. He roamed around the city and finally ended up in a bar. The bar was crowded with drunken men. Daikichi overheard one of them say, "Hey, did you hear that the emperor in the capital city is hosting a national sumo wrestling tournament?" "Yeah, it starts right in the capital city in 3 days," another man said. "I hear this time whoever wins the championship will be rewarded with a big bag of gold," another man said. Daikichi knew that was what he had to do. He left right away without even saying goodbye to Kayo and traveled to the capital city. The city was crowded with hundreds of strong-looking young men from all over the country. Many of them were lined up in a long line in front of the emperor's palace to register themselves for the tournament. So Daikichi joined the line. But as he stood there, he realized that many of the other men looked much younger and stronger than he did. I mean, he had once been famous for his strength and skills, but he just had not done any training in such a long time. So he felt completely out of place and out of shape. But he knew he needed the gold. As he was standing there, though, he noticed this little old lady crossing the street, quickly coming toward him. She was holding a baby. This old woman came straight to him and said, "Excuse me, sir, would you please hold this baby for a few minutes? I will be right back. But would you please promise not to drop the baby or put him down?" Now, the Daikichi had no idea who this old lady was, or where she was going, or why she had picked him out of this long line of young men. But there was something urgent and serious in her voice that made him say, "Sure, fine, I promise." And he took the baby willingly in his arms. The old lady smiled, bowed, and quickly walked away. Daikichi looked at the baby. He was a tiny newborn, sleeping peacefully. Then Daikichi had this strange sensation. It felt as if the baby was getting bigger. Daikichi looked down, but the baby had not changed his size. Then he realized what was going on, and chills ran down his spine. This baby was not getting bigger, but heavier. It started out no more than 7 pounds, but by now it was 15 pounds, 20 pounds, 25 pounds, 30 pounds. Daikichi realized that he had been tricked. This baby was not human. That old woman was probably a witch trying to trick him. He was about to drop the baby like a hot potato, but then he remembered his promise. I used to be a samurai warrior. No, I am still a samurai warrior. And a samurai warrior never breaks his promise. The baby was quickly gaining weight. Soon it was 100 pounds, 150. When it reached about 200 pounds, Daikichi could no longer be standing. He knelt down and felt as if his shoulders and his knees were breaking. Sweat poured down his face, and he clenched his teeth tightly. 250 pounds, 300 pounds, he refused to let go. The old woman still did not come back. Meanwhile, the line ahead of him was moving along. People lined up behind him impatiently urged him to move on, but Daikichi could not budge. Finally, they all started going around him, sneering and jeering, making fun of him for bringing the baby to the tournament. 350 pounds, 400 pounds, Daikichi thought he would faint right then and there. Then, as if by magic, the old woman was back. She effortlessly picked the baby up and stood tall and glowingly in front of him. Daikichi looked up in amazement. The old woman said, "Thank you so much for keeping your promise. I am the goddess of mercy, Kuan Yin, who protects the people in this city. Today, I had to help this young woman give birth to a baby. It was a difficult birth, so that's why I needed your help. If you had dropped this baby, both that young woman and her baby would have died. But because you kept your promise, they both survived. As a reward, I am going to give you and your children boundless strength. Now go ahead and wrestle in the tournament." And both the old woman and the baby vanished into thin air. Daikichi stood up as if awakened from a dream and staggered into the palace. But soon he found out that it was no dream at all. When he stood in the rounded arena set up in front of the emperor's throne to face his opponent, the strange and wonderful energy coursed through his veins that made him incredibly strong yet gentle. His first opponent, all 300 pounds of muscles, came charging, but all Daikichi had to do was blow on him. And his opponent immediately fell on the seat of his pants. Another opponent, all 500 pounds of muscles, came charging like a bull, but Daikichi danced around him lightly and stomped on the ground. The whole arena shook as if there was an earthquake, and his opponent immediately fell out of the ring. One by one, all day long, the wrestlers charged. One by one, all day long, Daikichi ejected them from the ring with a mere flip of a finger. At the end of the day, it was clear that Daikichi was the champion. The emperor rewarded him with a big sack of gold. Daikichi was happy, not just because of the gold, but because now he knew he was strong enough to become a father. He went back to Kaio and they got married and lived happily ever after. And it is said to this day that the descendants of Daikichi and Kaio always possess boundless strength.
It goes all my life's a circle, sunrise and sundown. The moon rolls through the nighttime till the daybreak comes around. And all my life's a circle, I can't tell you why. Seasons spinning